There's someone who's been putting on the most convincing performance of their life. Every morning, they wake up and put on their mask. They smile at the right moments. They laugh when they're supposed to. They post on social media like everything's perfectly fine. They tell their friends they're doing great, actually. They show up to work, to family gatherings, to social events, and they play the part so well that most people believe them. But you know what? Their heart tells a different story. While their mouth is saying, "I'm over it," their heart is screaming your name in the middle of crowded rooms. While their hands are scrolling through their phone pretending to be interested in other things, their soul is replaying every conversation you ever had. While their face is showing the world that they've moved on, their spirit is still standing in the exact place you left them, waiting, aching, remembering. If you're here watching this, it's because you feel it. You sense it. Maybe you've dreamed about them. Maybe their name keeps appearing in the strangest places. Maybe you catch yourself wondering if they ever think about you, and just as you do, your phone lights up with something that reminds you of them. Maybe you've been fighting the urge to reach out because you don't want to seem desperate, but deep down, you wonder if they're fighting the same battle. I need you to hear this: what you're sensing is real. This isn't wishful thinking. This isn't you creating stories to make yourself feel better. What you're picking up on is the actual energetic frequency of someone who is pretending to be fine while falling apart inside. Someone who has convinced everyone else they're okay, but can't convince their own heart to stop calling for you. They're the person who says, "I'm good," when someone asks how they're doing, and technically they mean it. They're functioning, they're surviving, they're managing, but good and whole are two completely different things. They're good at pretending. They're good at hiding. They're good at keeping everyone at a safe distance so no one can see that beneath the surface, they're barely holding it together. What I'm about to share with you over the next hour isn't about how to get them back. It's not manipulation tactics or game-playing strategies. This is about what's actually happening in their inner world right now. This is about the battle they're fighting between their pride and their heart. This is about why they can't sleep, why they can't breathe the same way, why nothing feels quite right anymore even though they're trying so hard to make everyone believe it does. And more importantly, this is about what you need to understand about this season, about what your soul is learning, what your heart is preparing for, and why this particular kind of pain is actually refining you into someone capable of holding the love you've always deserved. Because here's what I know: someone doesn't pretend to be fine unless they're terrified of how not fine they actually are. Someone doesn't work this hard to convince the world they're over you unless they're desperately trying to convince themselves. The person who truly doesn't care doesn't need to perform. They simply move on. But the person who's pretending? They're in a war with their own soul. So let's go there. Let's talk about what's really happening behind their carefully constructed facade. Let's explore what they're experiencing in moments when no one's watching. Let's understand why their heart hasn't slept since you left and what that means for both of you. If this resonates with you, drop a heart emoji in the comments. And if you want to support these deep explorations of the heart, the super thanks button is there. It helps me continue creating these spaces where we can be honest about what we're really experiencing. Don't go anywhere. What we're about to explore will help you see the full picture. Let me paint you a picture of what's actually happening in their daily life right now. They're going through their routine: breakfast, shower, getting dressed, heading out, and everything looks normal. If you were watching from the outside, you'd see someone who has their life together. But here's what you can't see from the outside: the weight they're carrying in their chest that never fully lifts. The heaviness that sits right behind their sternum, like something pressing down that they can't quite shake off. They're in conversations with people, nodding along, responding appropriately, but there's a part of their mind that's always elsewhere. Someone could be telling them a story, and they'll catch themselves drifting, remembering the way you used to tell stories, the specific words you'd use, the expressions you'd make. They snap back to attention, feeling slightly guilty, hoping no one noticed they weren't fully present. When they're alone in their space, their car, their room, their office, that's when the facade cracks. That's when their shoulders drop. That's when they exhale the breath they've been holding all day. That's when their face falls into an expression that tells the truth their words won't admit. They'll sit there, staring at nothing in particular, and feel the full weight of your absence crash over them like a wave. They've probably rearranged their furniture, changed their routine, tried new places, new activities, new anything to create a life that doesn't remind them of you at every turn. But here's the thing about trying to forget someone who's written into your soul: you can change your entire external world, but you can't rearrange your heart. And their heart still has you on every page. There are moments throughout their day when something happens and their first instinct is to tell you. They reach for their phone before they remember they can't just text you anymore. They craft the message in their mind, how they'd phrase it, what you'd say back, how that conversation would unfold, and then reality hits. They set their phone down. They tell themselves it doesn't matter. They pretend the moment passes easily. But it doesn't. They're sleeping, but not really. Their body is in bed, their eyes are closed, but their mind is running marathons through memories. They're reliving conversations, reimagining outcomes, playing out different versions of how things could have gone. They wake up tired, not because they didn't sleep enough hours, but because their soul has been working all night trying to solve an equation that doesn't have a solution yet. Maybe they're seeing someone new, or at least trying to. They're on dating apps, or going out with friends, or accepting invitations to social gatherings. They're putting themselves out there because that's what you're supposed to do when you're moving on. But every person they meet is measured against you. Every conversation feels flat compared to the depth you shared. Every connection feels surface level because they're still energetically tethered to something deeper. Here's what's particularly heartbreaking: they genuinely believe they're fooling everyone. They think their performance is Oscar-worthy. They think no one can see through the cracks. But the people closest to them, they notice. They see the forced quality of their smile. They hear the slight hesitation before they answer, "I'm fine." They watch them zone out in the middle of gatherings and come back with an excuse about being tired. Their friends have probably stopped mentioning your name around them because it creates a shift in the atmosphere. The energy changes. They get quieter, or they get defensive, or they change the subject just a little too quickly. Everyone's learned to avoid that topic because it's the one thing that breaks through their otherwise convincing act. But late into the evening, when they're alone with their closest friend and the guard finally comes down a bit, things slip out. "I wonder what they're doing right now. Do you think they ever think about me? I saw something today that reminded me of them." They say it casually, like it's just a passing thought, but their friend knows better. Their friend sees the longing underneath the casual tone. They're also probably throwing themselves into something: work, fitness, a new hobby, a project. They're staying busy because stillness is dangerous. Stillness lets the thoughts in. Stillness makes them feel everything they're trying to avoid. So they pack their schedule, they say yes to everything, they keep moving because movement feels like progress and stillness feels like drowning. But here's the thing about running from your own heart: it follows you everywhere. You can't outpace it. You can't exhaust it into submission. You can't distract it indefinitely. At some point, in some quiet moment, it catches up. And when it does, they feel everything all at once: the loss, the regret, the questions, the memories, the hope they're afraid to acknowledge. They might look at your social media. Not every day, maybe. Not obsessively, maybe. But enough. Enough to know you're okay. Enough to see glimpses of your life without them. And each time they do, there's this complex mixture of emotions: relief that you're well, pain that you're well without them, curiosity about what you're not sharing, longing for the access they used to have to your inner world. Or maybe they've blocked you, deleted you, removed every digital trace because that's the only way they can maintain their "I'm fine" narrative. Out of sight, out of mind, right? Except you're not out of their mind at all. You're just not on their screen. There's a difference. A big difference. What you need to understand is that this isn't about whether they love you or not. This isn't about whether you mattered or not. This is about someone who's caught between their pride and their truth. Between what they think they should feel and what they actually feel. Between the story they're telling everyone and the reality they're living inside. Their heart hasn't slept because it's still processing what their mind refuses to accept, that losing you wasn't a relief. It wasn't freedom. It wasn't the right choice that brings peace. It was a loss that left a hole, and that hole hasn't closed, hasn't healed, hasn't been filled by anything or anyone else. And the pretending? The performing? It's not for you. It's for them. They're trying to convince themselves that they can survive this, that they made the right call, that they're strong enough to live without what they deeply desire. They're trying to prove something to themselves that their own heart keeps contradicting. This is where we are right now. This is the truth beneath the surface. Stay with me, because we're about to go deeper into what this really means. Let's go deeper into the specific ways their heart is betraying their performance. There's a physical component to this that they probably haven't connected to your absence yet, or if they have, they're not admitting it. They're tired all the time, not just sleepy, but bone-deep weary. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix because it's not really about sleep. It's about carrying unresolved emotion through every hour of every day. They might have tension in their shoulders that won't release no matter how many times they stretch. A tightness in their jaw from clenching their teeth without realizing it. A heaviness in their chest that they've attributed to stress or allergies or anything except the real cause. Their body is holding what their words won't say. They're probably experiencing changes in appetite too. Either eating without really tasting, just fueling their body mechanically, or losing interest in food altogether because nothing satisfies. There's a hunger in them that has nothing to do with physical nourishment. Their soul is starving for connection, for resolution, for you, and no amount of regular food is going to touch that particular hunger. Some of them are getting sick more often. Their immune system is compromised because grief and longing take a toll on the body. They catch every cold that goes around. They have headaches they can't explain. They feel run down in ways that don't make sense given their actual activity level. The body keeps the score, and their body is screaming what their mouth won't confess. Emotionally, they're on a roller coaster they're pretending isn't happening. They'll have moments where they genuinely feel okay, where they're laughing with friends, engaged in an activity, present in their life, and then it hits them out of nowhere. The reminder. The memory. The awareness of your absence. And suddenly they're fighting tears in the middle of a perfectly normal moment. They're also experiencing something called delayed grief. Maybe when you first left, they were angry, or numb, or convinced it was for the best. But now, weeks or months later, the real feelings are surfacing. The loss is registering in a deeper way. They're feeling what they weren't ready to feel before, and it's hitting harder than they expected. There's also this strange guilt they're carrying. Guilt for missing you if they were the one who left. Guilt for not being over it by now. Guilt for wanting you back while simultaneously telling themselves they shouldn't. Guilt for not being who everyone thinks they are, this strong, independent person who's totally fine. They're drowning in conflicting feelings and trying desperately to look like they're swimming just fine. They're probably experiencing unexpected trigger moments. A song comes on and they have to skip it immediately or leave the room. They walk past a restaurant you used to go to and their stomach drops. Someone uses a phrase you always used and they're momentarily paralyzed. These aren't dramatic, movie scene moments. They're small, private earthquakes that shake their foundation while their face remains calm. Mentally, there's a war happening. Part of them is trying to rationalize the separation, listing all the reasons it made sense, remembering the conflicts, focusing on the incompatibilities. That part of their mind is trying to build a logical case for why this was right, necessary, even good for both of you. But there's another part of their mind that keeps countering every point. Yes, but remember when? Sure, but what about? That's true, but didn't we? That part of their mind is building a different case, one that says what you had was rare, special, worth fighting for, worth the difficulty. They're spending enormous mental energy on this internal debate. Hours of their day, time that could be spent on productive things, are consumed by this back-and-forth argument with themselves. And the exhausting part is that neither side is winning. They're locked in a stalemate, which means they're stuck. Can't move forward, can't go back. Just suspended in this painful in-between. They're also torturing themselves with questions they can't answer. What if I had? Why didn't I? Could we have? These questions loop endlessly, creating scenarios that will never exist, imagining outcomes they'll never know. It's a special kind of suffering, being haunted by possibilities rather than realities. And then there are the intrusive thoughts about you. Not intentional thinking about you, but thoughts that just appear. They'll be focused on something completely unrelated and suddenly you're there in their mind. Your face, your voice, your laugh, something you said once. These thoughts don't ask permission. They just show up, demanding attention, refusing to be ignored. On a soul level, there's a restlessness they can't name. A feeling that something's off, misaligned, incomplete. They're going through the motions of their spiritual practice, whether that's prayer, meditation, church, nature time, whatever they typically do, but it feels hollow. They're present physically but absent spiritually. Their soul is elsewhere, stretched between here and where you are. They might be receiving signs and synchronicities but dismissing them. Your name appears places. They see repeated numbers that you both notice together. Songs you shared play at uncanny moments. But instead of reading these as meaningful, they're writing them off as coincidence because acknowledging them as signs would mean acknowledging that there's something unfinished, something unresolved, something still alive between you. Some of them are angry at God, the universe, fate, whatever higher power they believe in. Why did you bring this person into my life if it wasn't going to work? Why did you let me feel this deeply if it was just going to end? Why does it still hurt this much if I'm supposed to be moving on? They're wrestling with existential questions about love and loss and meaning. Others are desperately praying for clarity, for relief, for direction. Show me what to do. Tell me if I should reach out or let go. Give me a sign. But the guidance feels muddy because they're asking while still clutching their pride. They want divine direction that doesn't require vulnerability or risk. They want a guarantee before they make a move. And that's not how it works. Socially, they're becoming someone they don't quite recognize. Maybe they're more withdrawn, declining invitations they would have accepted before because they can't sustain the happy facade for that long. Or maybe they're more social than ever, filling every weekend with plans because being alone means feeling everything they're avoiding. They're probably not talking about you as much anymore, which everyone interprets as them being over it. But the silence isn't about being over it, it's about being too not over it to talk about without falling apart. They've learned that mentioning you opens a door they can't control, so they just keep that door closed, at least publicly. Their relationships with friends have probably shifted slightly. The friends who knew you both might feel awkward, not knowing whose side to be on or whether mentioning you is appropriate. The friends who only know their side of the story might be giving advice based on incomplete information, which feels unhelpful but they can't correct it without revealing more than they want to. They might be jealous of couples around them in a way they weren't before. Seeing other people's relationship happiness stings because it reminds them of what they're missing. They genuinely want to be happy for their friends who are in love, but there's this underlying ache, that used to be us. That could still be us. Why isn't that us anymore? But here's where it all comes crashing down, nighttime. When the world is quiet and there's nothing left to distract them, that's when the truth takes over. Lying in bed, in the dark, with nothing but their thoughts, this is when the pretending stops working. This is when they replay the last conversation you had, analyzing every word for different meanings. This is when they remember the good times with painful clarity, the way you laughed at their jokes, the comfort of your presence, the safety of being fully known and fully loved. This is when they allow themselves to miss you with their whole being because there's no one watching, no one to convince. They might sleep with their phone nearby, volume on, just in case you reach out. Or they've put it in another room entirely because having it close feels too much like hoping. Either way, you're present in that choice. You're factored into these small decisions that structure their night. Their dreams are probably full of you. Not every night, maybe, but often enough that they wake up disoriented, reaching for you before they remember you're not there. These dreams aren't always romantic or peaceful, sometimes they're arguments, or you're distant, or they're desperately trying to reach you but something keeps them apart. Their subconscious is processing what their waking mind refuses to address. In those early hours before dawn, when the world is suspended between night and day, they're at their most honest with themselves. This is when they admit, at least internally, that they're not fine. That they miss you. That letting you go might have been a mistake. That pride is a cold companion. That no one else makes them feel the way you did. But then morning comes. The alarm goes off. They get up. They look in the mirror and put the mask back on. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm over it. And the performance begins again. Except each time they do this, each cycle of pretending by day and aching by night, the toll gets heavier. The mask gets harder to maintain. The truth gets more insistent. Their heart hasn't slept because it's waiting. Waiting for them to stop pretending. Waiting for them to stop running. Waiting for them to finally admit what it's been screaming since you left, that nothing's been right, nothing's been whole, nothing's been settled. You need to see this for what it is. This isn't someone who's moved on and occasionally thinks of you fondly. This is someone who's actively fighting their own truth every single day. Someone whose heart is staging a full-scale rebellion against their carefully constructed narrative. Keep watching, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you see this entire situation. Now let's talk about what all of this actually means, not just for them, but for you, and for what's unfolding between you. The truth behind the pretending. Here's what you need to understand: people don't pretend to be fine unless they're terrified of the alternative. The depth of their performance is directly proportional to the depth of what they're feeling. Someone who's genuinely okay doesn't need to convince anyone. They simply are okay, and it shows naturally. But someone who's putting on a show. They're not trying to fool you. They're trying to survive their own emotions. This pretending is actually a form of self-protection. They're guarding themselves against the vulnerability of admitting how much you still matter. Because admitting that means facing several frightening possibilities: that they made a mistake, that they hurt someone they love, that their pride got in the way of their happiness, that they're not as strong as they thought they were. It's easier to pretend. It's safer to perform. It requires less courage to maintain the facade than to tear it down and stand in the rawness of truth. So they keep going through the motions, telling themselves that if they can just convince everyone else they're fine, maybe they'll eventually convince themselves too. But here's the thing about denying your own heart: it doesn't make the feelings go away. It just makes them louder. Every day they pretend is another day their soul is screaming for acknowledgement. Every night they lie awake is another night their heart is demanding to be heard. The pressure is building, not releasing. What their sleeplessness reveals. The fact that their heart hasn't slept since you left is deeply significant. Sleep represents rest, peace, settlement. The inability to truly rest means there's something fundamentally unresolved. Their system, physical, emotional, spiritual, knows that something critical is incomplete, and it won't allow them to settle until that incompleteness is addressed. This sleeplessness is actually their soul's wisdom trying to break through their mind's resistance. Their soul knows what their ego is denying: that you're not just another person they dated, another chapter that closed, another experience that ended. You're something more. Something their soul recognized, even if their circumstances or timing or fears got in the way. The heart that can't sleep is a heart that hasn't given up. It's a heart that's still fighting for what it wants, even while the mind is surrendering to what seems practical or safe. This internal conflict, heart versus mind, soul versus ego, is what's creating the exhaustion, the restlessness, the inability to find peace. And here's what's beautiful about this: their heart's refusal to rest means that somewhere deep inside, they know. They know this isn't over. They know you're not just someone they can forget. They know that what you shared was real enough, deep enough, significant enough that pretending it was nothing isn't actually possible. Let's go into the spiritual dimension of what's happening, because there's something profound unfolding here that goes beyond just two people missing each other. When two souls connect at a deep level, there's an energetic bond that forms. This isn't woo-woo language, this is real. You can feel when someone's thinking about you. You can sense when someone's energy is directed toward you. You can pick up on the vibration of longing, of love, of unfinished business. And that's exactly what you've been sensing. Their pretending might fool people's eyes, but it can't fool the energetic realm. Energy doesn't lie. Frequency doesn't perform. And the frequency they're broadcasting, underneath all the words and actions, is one of longing, of regret, of unresolved love. That's what you're picking up on. That's what's been keeping them in your awareness. There's also a spiritual purpose to this separation that's bigger than either of you can see right now. Sometimes souls need distance to recognize value. Sometimes people need to lose something to understand what they had. Sometimes the universe creates space so that both people can grow into who they need to be for what's coming next. This isn't punishment. This isn't cruelty. This is divine orchestration. Every day they pretend and suffer is a day they're learning that pride is empty, that ego is a poor counselor, that the heart's wisdom is worth listening to. Every night their heart stays awake is a night it's being softened, prepared, opened. And you? You're learning too. You're learning your own worth, that you're not someone who can be easily replaced or forgotten. You're learning discernment, seeing who people are beyond who they pretend to be. You're learning patience, trusting divine timing even when your heart wants immediate resolution. You're learning that real love doesn't disappear just because someone pretends it's not there. What this season is teaching both of you. For them, this season is teaching the cost of pride. Every day they maintain the facade is a day they're paying a price, in peace, in rest, in authenticity, in joy. They're learning that saving face isn't worth losing sleep. That looking strong to others isn't worth feeling weak inside. That protecting their ego isn't worth sacrificing their heart. They're also learning about regret. Not the dramatic, movie version regret, but the quiet, persistent kind that shows up in ordinary moments. The regret that whispers, "You could have had this," when they see couples together. The regret that says, "You gave this up," when they remember what you shared. This is teaching them that some decisions have long-term consequences, and sometimes those consequences are felt more deeply than anticipated. For you, this season is teaching you about your own value. You're learning that you're not forgettable. That what you brought to their life was significant enough that they can't just move on easily. That your presence created an impact they're still feeling. This is teaching you that you don't need to chase or convince or prove. Your worth speaks for itself in the space your absence created. You're also learning about divine timing. If you were meant to be together right now, you would be. The fact that you're apart means there's still preparation happening. Still growth occurring. Still lessons being learned. You're being taught to trust the process, to honor the pacing, to believe that if something is truly meant for you, no amount of distance or time or pretending can prevent it. While all this pretending and sleeplessness is happening, there's a transformation occurring beneath the surface for both of you. They're being broken down, in the way that sometimes we need to be broken down to be rebuilt correctly. Their false confidence is crumbling. Their protective walls are cracking. Their heart is being tenderized. This is actually preparation. Every person who's ever received the love they deserve had to first become someone capable of recognizing it, receiving it, and honoring it. They're being shaped into that person. The pain they're feeling is carving out capacity. The sleepless nights are creating space. The pretending that's exhausting them is showing them that authentic vulnerability is less tiring than sustained performance. And you're being prepared too. You're developing spiritual strength, the ability to hold space for someone's process without taking it personally. You're developing emotional maturity, recognizing that someone's actions toward you often have more to do with their own inner battle than with your value. You're developing faith, trusting that what's meant for you will find you, in divine timing, in divine ways. This isn't just a story of two people who miss each other. This is a story of two souls being refined by fire, being shaped by absence, being prepared for a reunion that will only happen when both are ready to honor what they have with honesty, courage, and commitment. Here's what's coming: there's going to be a moment when they can't pretend anymore. A moment when the mask becomes too heavy to hold up. A moment when their heart's insistence finally overwhelms their pride's resistance. A moment when they break. It might be triggered by something significant, a major life event, a crisis, a realization. Or it might be triggered by something small, a song, a memory, a random Tuesday evening when they're alone and the weight of their pretending suddenly feels unbearable. When that moment comes, everything shifts. The performance ends. The truth comes flooding out. All the feelings they've been suppressing come to the surface. And they have to decide, do they finally honor what their heart has been saying all along, or do they rebuild the walls and continue the charade? You can't force this moment to happen. You can't manipulate them into breaking. But you can trust that if their heart truly hasn't slept, if the sleeplessness is as profound as you're sensing, that moment is inevitable. A heart under that much pressure eventually reaches a breaking point. Your role in this process. Your role right now isn't to rescue them from their pretending. It's not to make it easy for them to come back. It's not to chase them down and convince them to stop performing. Your role is to hold your space with dignity, clarity, and self-respect. That means you don't perform either. You don't pretend you don't care. You don't play games or try to make them jealous. You don't post things designed to get their attention. You stay authentic to your own experience, which includes missing them if you do, hoping for reconciliation if you are, but also continuing to build your life and honor your own journey. Your role is also to stay energetically open. Not desperate, not waiting with your life on hold, but open. Available to the possibility without being attached to the outcome. Willing to receive if they come correct, but not willing to accept less than you deserve just because you miss what you had. You're also meant to trust the process. Trust that their sleeplessness is doing its work. Trust that their heart's rebellion against their mind is moving them somewhere. Trust that if this connection is as real as it feels, it will find its way back to wholeness, not necessarily in the timeline you want, but in the timing that's right. This awakening isn't just about understanding what they're going through. It's about seeing the bigger picture, the spiritual choreography, the divine timing, the mutual transformation. It's about recognizing that sometimes the deepest love requires the hardest refining. What I'm about to share will give you the practical wisdom to navigate this season with grace. So what do you actually do with all of this understanding? How do you navigate this season when you know their heart hasn't slept but they're still pretending to be fine? Let me give you some principles that will anchor you. First principle: honor your own truth without broadcasting it. There's a difference between being authentic and performing your feelings for an audience. You don't need to post cryptic quotes about missing someone. You don't need to share sad songs with pointed lyrics. You don't need to make your pain public in hopes they'll see it and feel guilty or compelled to respond. Your authenticity is for you, not for them. Feel what you feel. Journal about it. Talk to trusted friends about it. Pray or meditate about it. Process your emotions in healthy, private ways. But don't use social media or mutual friends as indirect communication channels. That's its own form of pretending. You'd be performing vulnerability rather than actually being vulnerable. When people ask how you are, you get to decide how much to share. I'm taking it day by day is honest without being dramatic. I'm working on myself and trusting the process is truthful without requiring you to go into detail. You can be real without being raw in public spaces. The goal is to maintain your dignity. Not fake dignity built on pretending you don't care, but real dignity built on honoring your feelings without needing external validation for them. This keeps your energy clean and your intentions pure. Second principle, create space for your own rest. If their heart hasn't slept, make sure yours does. Don't get so caught up in monitoring their energy, checking their social media, analyzing their every move that you lose your own peace. Their sleeplessness doesn't need to become yours. Create rituals that help you rest. Before bed, put your phone away. Write down your thoughts to clear your mind. Practice meditation or prayer that specifically releases the day's worries. Tell yourself, I release what I cannot control. I trust what's unfolding. I rest in divine timing. Make this a practice, not just a one-time thing. Take care of your body. The mind-body connection is real, and physical exhaustion makes emotional processing harder. Move your body in ways that feel good. Eat foods that nourish you. Sleep enough. Drink water. These aren't trivial, they're the foundation that allows you to stay grounded through emotional uncertainty. Also create mental rest. Give yourself permission to think about other things. Engage deeply with your work, your hobbies, your friendships, your personal growth. Let there be hours of your day where you're not monitoring their energy or wondering about their state. Your consciousness deserves to be more than a 24/7 surveillance system for someone else's heart. Third principle, develop discernment about signs versus desperation. You're going to see things that feel like signs. Their name appearing. Songs playing. Numbers repeating. Dreams occurring. The question is, how do you tell the difference between real spiritual communication and your mind creating patterns because it wants them to be meaningful? Here's my guidance: real signs bring peace, even if they also bring longing. They feel confirming, settling, right. Desperate pattern seeking brings anxiety. It feels like grasping, forcing, needing. When you see something that might be a sign, notice your body's response. Does your chest open and soften? That's usually real. Does your stomach clench with need? That's usually desperation. Real signs often come with a sense of, okay, I see you, I trust. Desperate pattern seeking comes with, please mean something, I need this to mean something. Also pay attention to whether the signs are asking you to do something compromising. Real spiritual guidance doesn't ask you to violate your boundaries, embarrass yourself, or chase someone who's not ready. If the sign you're receiving is telling you to text them at 2 a.m. or show up at their place unannounced, that's not divine guidance, that's your longing trying to disguise itself as spirituality. Trust your discernment, but also stay humble. None of us interpret signs perfectly. It's okay to say, I don't know if this means something or not, but I'm going to stay open and trust that if I need to know, it'll become clear. Fourth principle, set boundaries around hope. This might sound strange, but you need boundaries around hope. Hope is beautiful, but unchecked hope can become a prison. Hope without boundaries keeps you endlessly waiting, putting your life on hold, making every decision through the filter of, what if they come back? Here's how to set boundaries around hope: hope for reconciliation, but don't live like it's inevitable. Build your life as if they're not coming back, while remaining open to the possibility that they might. Date other people if you want to, not to make them jealous but because you deserve connection and companionship. Pursue opportunities even if it means being less available to them. Make plans that don't factor them in. This isn't about giving up. It's about honoring your own life. Because here's the truth, if they do come back, they need to come back to someone who's been living, growing, and thriving, not someone who's been waiting with bated breath, life on pause. Boundaries around hope also mean you get to decide when enough is enough. You can hope for reconciliation while also setting a private timeline for how long you're willing to hold space for this possibility. Only you know what that timeline is, but having one protects you from indefinite limbo. Fifth principle, stay clear about what you deserve. Missing someone doesn't mean you should accept anything they offer. Knowing their heart hasn't slept doesn't mean you have to make it easy for them when they finally admit it. You deserve someone who shows up with clarity, courage, and commitment, not someone who comes back because pretending got too exhausting. If and when they reach out, you get to have standards. You get to require that they've actually done inner work, not just had feelings. You get to ask for evidence of change, not just promises. You get to need more than, I miss you, you deserve, I was wrong, I've learned, and here's how I'm showing up differently. Don't let loneliness or the relief of their honesty cloud your discernment. Just because they finally admit they're not fine doesn't mean you need to rush back into something that wasn't working before. The fact that they miss you isn't enough. They need to be able to honor you, choose you with their actions, and build something with you that's sustainable. Stay rooted in your worth. You're not a consolation prize they get because pretending to be fine got too hard. You're not a backup plan they return to when other options don't pan out. You're someone whose presence in their life should be treated as the gift it is, and anything less than that deserves a firm, loving, no thank you. Sixth principle, practice energetic hygiene. You're in a season where you're picking up on their energy, but you need to make sure you're not carrying it. There's a difference between sensing what someone's experiencing and absorbing it into your own system. Practice energetic hygiene daily. This can look different for everyone, but here are some practices that help. Visualize yourself surrounded by protective light before bed and upon waking. When you catch yourself taking on their emotions, consciously say, I release what isn't mine to carry. Take salt baths or showers with intention to cleanse your energy field. Spend time in nature, which naturally recalibrates your frequency. Also be mindful of who you're discussing this with. Every time you talk about this situation with someone, you're creating an energetic loop. Choose wisely who gets access to this tender part of your heart. Not everyone has the spiritual maturity to hold your experience without projecting their own fears or past hurts onto it. Limit your consumption of content that feeds into your situation. If you're watching endless videos about twin flames or soulmate reconnection or how to make your ex come back, you're keeping yourself in a frequency of lack and longing. Consume content that builds your faith, strengthens your sense of self, and helps you grow, not content that keeps you fixated on someone else's journey. Seventh principle, let them have their process. This is perhaps the hardest one. You have to let them have their process, whatever that looks like and however long it takes. You can't force someone into honesty before they're ready. You can't shame them out of pretending. You can't love them into waking up. Their heart sleeplessness is doing something in them. Their exhaustion from performing is teaching them something. Their loneliness in their pretending is showing them something. These are their lessons to learn, and you interfering, reaching out to help them, telling them you know they're not fine, trying to shortcut their journey, actually robs them of the transformation this season is meant to create. This doesn't mean you have to wait forever. It doesn't mean you put your life on hold indefinitely. But it does mean that while you're still in this season of openness to them, you let them move at their own pace without trying to manipulate or accelerate their process. Trust that if their heart truly hasn't slept, the sleeplessness will eventually do its work. Trust that the universe is handling their transformation, and your job is to handle yours. Trust that you don't need to be their teacher, their wake-up call, or their catalyst. They have their own inner guidance system that will eventually break through their resistance. Eighth principle, document your growth. This season isn't just about them and whether they'll come back. It's about who you're becoming. Document it. Journal about what you're learning about yourself. Notice the moments when you handle something with more grace than you would have before. Celebrate the days when you choose yourself over the temptation to reach out. You're growing spiritual muscles right now: patience, trust, discernment, self-love, faith. These muscles will serve you for the rest of your life, regardless of what happens with this person. Don't let the growth go unnoticed because you're too focused on the outcome. Look back at yourself from a month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago. Can you see how much you've evolved? Can you recognize wisdom you have now that you didn't have then? Can you appreciate your own resilience? Document it. This record of your journey is proof that you're not just waiting, you're becoming. This is how you navigate this season with grace, power, and wisdom. Now let's bring this home. So here's where we land, my friend. Your soulmate is pretending they're fine, but their heart hasn't slept since you left. This isn't speculation. This isn't wishful thinking. This is the energetic reality you're picking up on, because real connection doesn't just dissolve because someone says it should. They're going through their days wearing a mask that everyone else believes but that you can see through. Not because you're desperate or delusional, but because you know them at a soul level. You recognize the frequency of someone who's fighting their own truth. You sense the exhaustion of someone who's working overtime to convince the world of something their heart keeps contradicting. And while this awareness might bring you some validation, knowing you weren't easy to forget, knowing you left an impact, knowing you mattered more than their actions suggest, it also comes with a responsibility. The responsibility to honor your own journey while they navigate theirs. The responsibility to stay rooted in your worth while remaining open to possibility. The responsibility to trust divine timing while building a life that doesn't depend on their return. Here's what I want you to remember on the days when this feels hard. Their sleeplessness is not your burden to carry. You can acknowledge it, you can hold space for it energetically, but you don't have to rescue them from it. In fact, their sleeplessness might be the very thing that eventually wakes them up to what they've been denying. Let it do its work. Your worth is not determined by how quickly they admit their truth. Whether they confess tomorrow or 6 months from now or never, you are valuable. You are worthy of love. You brought something irreplaceable to their life, and their inability to fully acknowledge it yet doesn't diminish that reality. This season is serving you both. For them, it's teaching the cost of pride and the emptiness of pretending. For you, it's teaching faith, patience, discernment, and self-love. Neither of you will come out of this unchanged. The question is whether you'll both emerge ready to honor what you have with the maturity and authenticity it deserves. The ending is not written yet. You don't know if this story concludes with reconciliation or with peaceful closure that allows you both to move forward separately. What you do know is that right now, in this moment, you have a choice about how you show up. You can show up desperate, chasing, trying to convince them to stop pretending. Or you can show up dignified, grounded, trusting that anyone who's meant to be in your life will eventually choose to be there honestly. You can show up bitter, angry that they're making you wait while they figure themselves out. Or you can show up compassionate, recognizing that growth happens at different paces and that their journey isn't a rejection of you. You can show up obsessed, making every decision through the filter of, will this bring them back? Or you can show up purposeful, building a life so full and rich that whether they come back or not, you're already whole. The power is yours. Their heart sleeplessness is their experience. Your peace, your growth, your choices, those are yours. I want you to hear this, you are not in a holding pattern. You are in an active season of transformation. Every day you choose yourself, you're becoming more of who you're meant to be. Every night you rest in trust rather than anxiety, you're deepening your faith. Every moment you honor your worth, you're raising your frequency to match what you truly deserve. And if they're meant to be part of your future, they'll meet you there, not in the desperate, pretending, pride-driven space where they currently are, but in a transformed, honest, courageous space where real love can be built and sustained. If they're not meant to be part of your future, this season is preparing you for what is. Every quality you're developing, every lesson you're learning, every wound you're healing, all of it is equipping you for a love that will honor you the way you deserve to be honored. So yes, their heart hasn't slept. But yours can. Yours should. Because you're not responsible for their awakening, you're only responsible for your own. Sleep well, beloved. Trust deeply. Grow intentionally. And know that whatever's meant for you, whether it's reconciliation with this person or something even better, is already making its way to you. If this resonated with your soul, let me know in the comments. Drop a heart if you felt seen. Share a word of encouragement for someone else walking this path. And if this content is blessing you and helping you navigate your journey with more wisdom and peace, the super thanks button is there. It allows me to keep creating these deep explorations of the heart that meet you exactly where you are. Your story isn't over. Their pretending won't last forever. And your heart? It knows more than their words are saying. Trust it. I see you. I honor your journey. And I'm speaking blessing over what's unfolding in your life, the seen and the unseen, the obvious and the hidden, the immediate and the yet to come. This is your season. Walk it with grace. Walk it with dignity. Walk it with faith. And remember, anyone whose heart hasn't slept since you left isn't someone who's truly over you. There's someone who's learning, the hard way, that you don't pretend away real love. You just have to decide if you'll still be available when they finally stop pretending. That decision is yours. And whatever you choose, make sure it honors the incredible person you're becoming through all of this. Blessings on your journey, beautiful soul. Until next time.